¿Sabes qué pasa? La vez pasada
¿Tienen falsitos?
no estaba desconectado el cable de la computadora. Yo lo noté. Mira. Ese es de esta compu, creo. Como llega a penitas y jalan eso, se desconecta. Y entonces. Va, no es estás en. Hay por ahí un entrada de USB. Va.
Oye, somos la final, no te parece que les fue con
¿Tiene alguna disponible? Rápido, nada más para pasarla.
viernes. Y fue una locura ese día.
Que tengo. ¿Cuándo?
Aquí acabo las
¿Todo bien? ¿Todo bien, Sam? ¿Todo bajo control? Es un caos ahorita en el laboratorio.
Pero el martes, pues.
Es que al final del semestre desconectan todo, cambian. O sea, no sabes dónde está.
Ajá, y esta es una sala de audio.
In preview, you want me to open it up?
Yes, please. Porque vamos a transmitir por estamos aquí transmitiendo en la cámara.
Ah, bueno, no, si nos hubieras dicho antes, tenemos una cámara que es 270, 220 de rango.
¿Te sigue la voz?
Y sigue la voz, ajá.
No sabía que existía.
Apenas ayer lo usamos pero ahí la tenemos.
Y ahorita.
Ya vamos a empezar. Entonces, bueno, a ver. Esta es nuestra penúltima sesión de invitados. La siguiente semana tendremos la última. Y con eso cerramos el curso prácticamente, el semestre.
Yes.
Entonces, bueno, ahorita Maya nos va a hacer favor de presentar a Tim. ¿No? ¿Pregunta?
Sí. Va a haber
¿Va a haber foro? No, no va a haber.
Oye. Se me está abriendo el camino.
Ahora que diga, mira, bueno, por eso sí va a haber.
Participación, sí hay.
¿Doble?
¿Empezamos, Miri?
Sí.
¿Alguna indicación más?
Espera, es que Luis está enfermo.
Sí.
I'm moving the display, the screen, because it's easy. I can give you. But the video you're going to show it at the end or at the beginning? In between. Okay,
¿Esto video? Bueno, a ver, muchachos, pongan atención. Buenas tardes. Bueno, vamos a empezar esta conferencia. Pablito, ¿puedes poner el Facebook? No pude entrar a hoy. Vamos a empezar esta conferencia. Les platicamos. Algunos de ustedes estuvieron hace 3 meses, quizá, cuando vino Grace de Fútbol Más. ¿Alguien recuerda a Grace? Creo que fue en septiembre. Exactamente. Ella vive en México, pero es chilena, exactamente. Bueno, en esa ocasión, ella vino a presentarnos los proyectos que está realizando la Fundación Fútbol Más, cuyo titular y coordinador aquí se encuentra, que es Sergio Guerrero. Él ahorita lo vamos a presentar. Empezamos a colaborar con Fútbol Más este semestre. Les propusimos a ustedes participar en varios proyectos, pero aunque no pudimos llevarlos a cabo todos, porque algunos implican ir a lugares que están un poco lejanos de la Ibero, se nos complicó mucho ir en viernes. Ellos tienen actividad los viernes, entonces ir a Iztapalapa, a una zona en particular, luego a la Gustavo Madero, se complicaba muchísimo por el tráfico, porque acá no hay clase los viernes, pero afortunadamente sí pudimos colaborar en un proyecto, que es donde está aquí su compañero José Manuel, y está también Jaime, que no es de esta clase, Ah, bueno, claro, ellos fueron, pero ya no pudimos continuar ese proyecto también. Estamos haciendo entrevistas a líderes comunitarios que participan en Fútbol Más de 30 diferentes países, donde Fútbol Más tiene proyectos. Y estos líderes comunitarios utilizan, como ya se explicó aquella vez, el fútbol como motor de cambio y desarrollo social, ¿sí? El fútbol que propone esta fundación no es competitivo, es un fútbol para socializar, para adquirir valores y para empoderar a los niños y a los jóvenes de estas comunidades vulnerables. Bueno, como parte de ese proyecto, no sé si lo platicó Grace la vez pasada, Fútbol Más va a organizar un mundialito un mes antes del Mundial de México, Estados Unidos y Canadá. Ese mundialito se organiza con una organización internacional, de la cual ahorita nos van a platicar, y hay diferentes actividades que se van a llevar a cabo. Van a venir 30 equipos de 30 países diferentes, de jóvenes menores de 16, 17 años, hombres y mujeres, y van a jugar con la idea de promover el discurso en favor de estas niñeces y juventudes un mes antes del Mundial, aprovechando que viene el Mundial y va a haber muchos medios de comunicación. Estas organizaciones se van a juntar para llevar a cabo este mundialito. Ese mundialito va a ser en Huastepec. Nuestra intención es colaborar con Fútbol Más, con Team Vyner y con otras personas para apoyarlos en lo que van a realizar con ese mundialito, ya sea haciendo producción, haciendo audio, haciendo video, haciendo notas periodísticas, haciendo ilustraciones. Entonces, una de las ramas de ese proyecto el próximo año en mayo, que va a ser en Huastepec, una semana este mundialito se lleva a cabo durante 11 días, 10 días en Huastepec, en el centro vacacional. El profesor Tim Vyner, que viene de la Universidad de Bath, del Departamento de DISEño, ha colaborado desde hace varias décadas en Juegos Olímpicos, mundiales y grandes eventos deportivos, llevando una propuesta del arte, el arte con jóvenes y con niños de comunidades, como una manera de promover el desarrollo, la resiliencia y el fortalecimiento de valores. Entonces, como queremos convocar a varios estudiantes y profesores el próximo año para colaborar con este proyecto, aprovechando que él viene a México, lo invitamos para que nos viniera a dar esta conferencia de forma introductoria, para que nos platique lo que ha hecho en estas actividades, en estos otros grandes eventos. Así que les pido que le demos un fuerte aplauso. Maya nos va a apoyar para ayudar en la traducción o en la conversación si alguien tiene dudas, preguntas o quiere hacerlo en español. Adelante. Pasa al frente para que te veas ahí.
Pasa al frente.
Sí,
Perdón, checa porque no sé qué cámara es.
sí. Yo checo su nombre.
Estoy usándole la copa.
Sí, ahorita la paso, ahorita la paso. Adelante, Maya. Amaya.
No entendí.
Algo de...
Ya, adelante, adelante.
Ah, bueno. Bueno, yo soy Amaya y él es Tim Vyner. Él se dedica a viajar alrededor del mundo y documenta diferentes experiencias y diversas ciudades. Él específicamente se dedica a documentar eventos deportivos, además de hacer tours alrededor del mundo en museos. Se ha dedicado a cubrir específicamente copas mundiales, así como Juegos Olímpicos. Él es muy efectivo con su pluma, con su sketchbook y con su iPad, y específicamente se ha dedicado a trabajar en eventos de la Copa Mundial como en 2002, en Japón y en Corea, también en los Juegos Olímpicos de Beijing, también acompañado del periódico The Times en los Juegos Olímpicos de Londres en 2012, y él vivió un tiempo en un monasterio ortodoxo en Mount Athos en 2013, y trabajó de la mano de Street Child World Cup en Moscú en 2018, así como también cubriendo la Copa Mundial de Rusia de fútbol, el FIFA, por parte de The Telegraph, otro periódico, y también cubrió el Street Child United, en Qatar en 2022, así como en 2023, también con Street Child United, el Street Child Cricket World Cup. Él se graduó del Royal College of Art en 1988 y continúa siendo un profesor de ilustración en Bath School of Design, Bath Spa University, y tiene diversas exhibiciones alrededor del mundo, como justamente en este monasterio en Mount Athos, también como en Londres, en Japón y creo que ya mencioné Londres, y pues él es Tim Vyner.
Amazing.
Muy bien.
That's an idea I'm going to take back to England. I'm going to get my students to introduce it.
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you. Really good. Now, apologies. I'm the only one in the room that doesn't speak Spanish. So I'm asking you all to listen to me in English. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Follow me. That's good. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. So, as we're saying there, I'm from Bath Spa University. Has anyone been to the UK?
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anyone been to Bath?
No.
Does anyone know where it is? You have.
Yeah.
What did you do? What did you do when you were there?
I remember it was in 2018, so I was very young. But I went to Stonehenge, and then we went to Bath. And if I'm being honest, we just went shopping.
It's a good place to shop. But Bath is a World Heritage Site. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the whole city. So it's a very beautiful Roman city with a lot of beautiful architecture. And there's a small school of design there, part of Bath Spa University. And our campus is called Loxford Road Campus. I've just got, if I can make this technology work, I've got a short 50-second video of the campus, just to give you an idea. So when you're looking at this, see if it compares with your campus, some of the workshops that you operate in. Now, how do I get back to the oh. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the building itself is not part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a 1970s furniture factory, a Herman Miller furniture factory. It's one of the first modular factories that was built in the UK by Grimshaw architects. Famous piece of architecture, and many factories in the UK and in Europe and throughout the world have followed this model. And inside the buildings are very much focused on open plan environment. It feels quite similar to your studios. It's a place where we display work as well as make work. There's formal teaching spaces, presentation spaces, workshops. There's a big emphasis on students being able to do research through practice. So you're making your projects into real outcomes, lecture theatres, and so that gives you a sense of the art school, the kind of design ethos that I come from, the background that I come from. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here today to talk about an organisation called Street Child United, working with Checo and Football Mass, an amazing, wonderful sort of partner to host the Street Child World Cup next year in Mexico City. And I'm here really, a World Cup is a sporting event, and sport is a key driver of any World Cup activity. But Street Child United stands on sort of three pillars of sport, which is the kind of the bit that gets the traction, it gets the people coming to watch it. And then there's advocacy, which is fighting for the rights of street connected adults around the world. Groups that are marginalized and not listened to, don't necessarily have the basic human rights that everyone else has. And the third pillar is the arts. It's a great understanding that art and design plays a part in empowering young people. So that's really what I want to talk to. But before I get to the tournament itself, I just wanted to sort of start right back at the beginning and give a little background as to how you end up in the position that I'm in now, and thinking back to a time when I was sitting in a room not dissimilar to this, and an old professor came in and talked about his life, a guy called Paul Hogarth, who was a British reporting artist. He was like a journalist, but he used the power of drawing to tell his stories. And I was sitting where you were sitting, and I was listening to him, and that was a moment that made me think that's what I want to do. That it just kind of stuck with me. I didn't know how I would do it, but I thought that's what I want. It just made a connection. So sometimes you'll learn lots of skills. You'll meet lots of professors and tutors giving you different information and knowledge, and you'll learn and soak up all those skills. But there's a moment when you'll think, what do I want to do with all those skills? And so you should all be beginning to think about that. What do I want to do next year, next 5 years, the next 10 years? Your careers will change, technology will change, the nature of your work will change, but there will be some sort of core principles that stay with you throughout your life. And this was an idea that the idea that you could go to a place that you didn't know and capture it in the form of a drawing and tell a story about this place. So this is a city in Poland, in Eastern Europe, just after the Second World War, where the city had been bombed. There was not much left of the city. And what I really love about this drawing is it's not a celebration of an old building that's still there. The old building was far in the distance. It's a celebration of the moment of the repair. It's all about the scaffolding. It's all about this brief moment when this city is going to be rebuilt. And I would also argue or make a case that it's human instinct to try and record and capture the world around you. So does anyone know what those images are? Do you recognize those? Okay. When were they painted? Do you anyone know?
Thousands of years ago.
15,000, maybe 15,000 years ago. So the reason I put that slide in is just to say I think it's our instinct to record and document the world around us, to capture it in some way. It's not to a commission, it's not for a client, but we're just recording the world around us. And so I kind of set out on this career where whenever I got a little bit of funding, a little bit of finance behind me, I would use that money into making a trip somewhere, a trip that I felt had a story to tell. And so I think this was probably 20, 25 years ago now. The title is from a newspaper article. It's called A Moment's Peace, and it's about the rebuilding of Beirut that had suffered a generation or longer of conflict. And I didn't know anything about Beirut. I just went there and observed and looked on the street and captured it, knowing that there would be a reason to work in a newspaper might be interested in that story. So this is the side of a building in downtown Beirut. And this is a picture, is what I would call a single image narrative. It's one picture that tells a bit of a story. So you've got a building that has got pictures of conflict. There's war in evidence in the building. You've got a family here sitting, smoking sort of pipes, and someone sitting in the distance. There's a young garden. That garden's fairly new and it's just been planted. And then there's some graffiti on the wall. Does anyone speak French?
Yes, does.
Want to translate?
Yeah, but we depend on that. There is no freedom that we can like on like see, like
For those who don't
that we
fight.
can have for those that refuse to
Fight.
battle,
Yeah.
or fight.
So in some ways, that's a that was a well done, thank you. Took me a while to translate them myself. So that I don't know what that building looks like now. I don't know if that building is still there, but that moment in time captures a pride family that maybe lives inside that building that wants to plant a new garden to show some regeneration. And in the background, there's a legacy of the war that said, you're not going to find freedom unless there is the power to fight. And that message now is sort of still there, and you sort of see it in the world. So this is in southern Lebanon. This is outside of Beirut, on the Israeli border. And here again, you've got the other side of that fence is kind of ground-to-air missiles. On this side of the fence, you've got the Hezbollah flag flying, and you've got kids throwing stones. And this is a world that is, in some ways, was in a brief period of peace. I had access to travel and draw and document that. And I soon realized after making a few of these trips that when I don't speak the language in a place that I visit, which is most of the places that I go to, fortunately, there would often be a group of kids playing football. It's a sort of universal language. It's a leveler. It brings people together. So I could stand in that car park or in that space and interact with this group, not through the power of language, but through the power of sport and football. And I would often ask a group of kids that I'd maybe drawn, I said, could I take a photo of you? Team photo. These guys are probably 35 years old now. It makes me wonder, what is their story? Where are they now? What are they doing? So again, I think the sort of legacy of this documenting of a place is interesting. That was 2000. So there may be, so they're 11 or 12. That will be, in their mid-30s now. And I then produced a book called World Team, which is about kids playing football in different parts of the world. The idea behind this was on the left-hand column of the book was a time zone. So in Lebanon at 3 p.m. Here's a couple of kids that were from that car park. I just dropped them into the page. On another page in Mexico, that might be 7 a.m. In India, it might be 10 p.m. And then when you get to the end of the book, you realize that all this is taking place at the same time. So somebody somewhere in the world at any moment is playing football. So it's a very simple message, and it was a children's book. And that children's book had a big edition in Japan. And Japan and Korea were hosting the first Asia World Cup. So again, when I've mentioned to you about working out what it is you want to do with your careers, you're acquiring a skill set. That skill set, lots of people have. What is it that you want to do with that skill set to drive a career? You have to look for opportunities there. So I sent this book, knowing that there was a Japanese edition and there was a Japanese World Cup. I sent it to various people in the English Football Association. And I said, there have been Olympic artists, there have been war artists, but I've never heard of a football artist. And I'm your man. So it was an opportunistic approach. And I got funding then to start documenting these events, these World Cups. So I went to, David Beckham was the most famous person on the planet at that point, I think. You could argue, maybe he still is, but he certainly was then as a player. So I would go in and I would sort of put myself between the game and the fans. I can't use traditional drawing materials or an iPad, technical digital equipment. I can't draw a football match better than you can video it or capture it in real life. But what I can do through the power of drawing is take my time and observe the atmosphere and the mood and the unique kind of personality of a World Cup in Japan, which will be very different to a World Cup in Mexico. So that's what these paintings were doing early days. So this is 20 years ago. That then led to Olympic Games when I was working with newspapers. So this was in Beijing, 2008. Usain Bolt at that point was maybe the most famous person on the planet. Again, walking the streets of China. China had never hosted anything like this previously. And they were opening up, it was their sort of coming out party. It was the moment when they were going to make themselves available to the world. And then in 2012, there was a few things that came together. This is a BBC news reporter, and and he's broadcasting live news into people's audiences, into people's living rooms. This is the news at 6 p.m. These are the stories of the day. And around this time, that notion of checking into the news once a day, reading a newspaper, was changing. We suddenly had access to news 24/7, and that's all you know. If you want to find out what's going on, check your phone, and you get the story. But that was a moment of change. So no one wanted a painting of an Olympic Games activity 3 months after it happened. The stories moved on. So this coincided with Apple launching the first iPad, first generation iPad. And in the process of drawing with an iPad, you could effectively publish in real time. I could send that drawing straight to the newspaper and they could publish it online. So that was a real change in, going back to those core principles of observing and building stories through observation and drawing. That was the same, but the technology changed the way in which I could find an audience for that work. And so every day I would be in the Olympic Park making drawings and publishing them in the newspaper. And that was a great platform for.
There's a new short film that was made, I think, by student here. It's Natalia Garcia Gras, and it's called Pasarino. And she studied like kids' love of football and made this short that was actually nominated for art. Like, it's amazing.
Fantastic. Can you share it?
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's like two teenage girls that are taken to a game, and like the way they see everything, and like the moments, like kind of sick of that.
They filmed it.
But no, it's amazing.
Oh, you have to share that. I'd like to see that. Yeah. So a little, it's not going to be too technical, this, but this is a little diagram. Does anyone recognize that diagram? No? Do you know? Do any of you study design? You study design. Your communication students. Okay, well, I think this is relevant to communication students as well as design students. So in the UK, there's an organisation called the Design Council, and they created this diagram, which is called a double diamond, and it's basically the 4 Ds of design. And that describes the process that any project will go through in the process of making that project. And the first stage is the discovery part. So whenever your tutors ask you or give you a brief and you're beginning to develop a story as a communication student, you're discovering everything about that project. You want to find out everything about it. And that's an opening out stage. That's a kind of exploration phase. And then the second phase is the sort of defining stage. That's when you're beginning to, you're starting to narrow down, then you're converging ideas. You've done a little bit of exploration and you've narrowed down the problem. What is it? What's your story? What are you trying to tell? Okay. And then the third phase is an opening up again. You've defined your project a little bit. Now you've got to develop it. What's the best way of telling that story? What medium do I use? Where do I make it? What's the tone of voice? And that's an opening up stage. And then finally, you narrow down and you deliver that project and then you present it. So I don't know whether you've ever thought about your projects in that way, whether you do a project in an hour or whether you do a project over a period of weeks. You might just analyze the journey that you went through with that project and see if that kind of fits with your approach to your work. And the reason I put that in there is I think in the UK, my students, the students I work with, they're very good at the narrowing down. They're very good at defining and delivering. What are the tutors asking me to do? Oh, I've come up with an idea and I want to deliver it. And I would just say to you all, those discover and develop phases, those opening up phases, that's where the tension is, that's where the excitement is. That's where your opportunities for surprises and experimentation are really sort of important. So just think about that sort of model when you work with your projects. I find that quite helpful. So technology's changed. I don't have to carry loads of equipment with me anymore. I've just got my sketchbook, my match guide, my pens, an iPad so I can draw on location, and I'm in Russia, drawing fans in Red Square, sending those to a newspaper, finding Wi-Fi wherever I can, in a campsite, and then the work appears in a newspaper the next day, and there's some words that would go with that. And at that point, I've kind of got some sort of trust. I've kind of been doing, you know, from those early days when I was just traveling because I wanted to go somewhere, and I'm now being commissioned to go build a kind of story around World Cups and Olympic Games. In Russia in 2018, I was introduced, I had a lucky exchange with John, who's the co-founder of Street Child United. And this is the opening ceremony of the Street Child World Cup in Moscow in 2018. And so I'm working for a newspaper on the FIFA World Cup, and this is about 3 months before the FIFA World Cup had started. And it's the moment when the world is watching, or the press attention is on a group of marginalized, disadvantaged young people from all over the world who have got all sorts of shared experiences and trauma that comes to, you know, is recognized in this tournament. And I was on the outside, kind of doing the same thing that I was doing for a newspaper for a World Cup. I was just this one guy on the outside looking in on this event that Street Child United organized. I don't know how they do it, get all these teams that have young people without birth registration, without passports, without national identity, gets them all to a particular location, builds a World Cup tournament around, and you see the lives of these young people change throughout that tournament. So I was on the first time I worked with Street Child United, I was very much on the outside looking in. So I would just be this guy in the background, drawing, capturing, again, not necessarily sport, but in this case, there was a day trip. So I would imagine in May, there'll be a trip for all the teams into Mexico City. So they'll be based in Mazatepec for the games, but then there'll be a trip into Mexico City and an opportunity to see some of the sites. In this case, you've got Team Tanzania in their tracksuits. You've got Team Brazil jumping around, dancing, taking selfies. You've got young Russian cadets, and you've got a Team India in national dress, wandering around Red Square. Who'd have thought the world would change so much in those few years since then? But I was, like I say, I was on the outside looking in. So each team is invited to make a cultural display of some kind. So they would, it's called the Late Show. Teams are invited to sing, dance, perform, say something about their cultural identity. These are the boys from Team Kenya. Very nervous, very reluctant to get on stage, didn't want to do it. And as soon as they got on stage and the drumming started, you couldn't get them off stage. Drumming workshops, and these are really super quick drawings, sketches, loose. And one of the things I really love about a Street Child tournament is that you go into the tournament with an empty portfolio. There's no words written down, there are no images that exist. And then 10 days later, you've got a body of work that you can exhibit. The teams can come and have a look and identify themselves, see themselves in the pictures. And there's a real sense of, you know, creating something in the moment. And that's still the plan for this tournament as well. And so the conversations will be about, can they recognize themselves? Do they see themselves sharing similar interests from Team Kenya to Team Bolivia? And it's those sort of common shared experience that is only facilitated through the arts, I think, that allows these conversations to emerge. Well, I'll show you a quick animation, actually, if that's possible. Can we jump between? Bear with me for a minute. So just to say, do any of you use iPads for drawing, Procreate, anything like that? Yeah. So you know that it kind of records the code of each drawing, and you can create a little animation. So one of the first moments that the teams all get together might be many teams were in Chennai? Do you think 24 teams, something like that?
Yep.
So 24 teams from all around the world are in a room for the first time, and there's a session called Spirit of the Games, and in that session, the team, the kind of behaviour expectations are laid out, and I'm drawing that 2-hour session, and then you can make it into a little animation that runs for 30 seconds. Fire down and get back to the other screen. Sure. Great, thanks. So, I'm not going to win any awards for animation there, but they are about just capturing that moment. And again, when I'm in that room, it might be that the animations are projected at the General Assembly at the end, or they're actually projected in front of the teams when they can see themselves in those moments. The tournaments have a poster, and not an official poster, but it's a print or an image from that represents the games. So this was the Street Child World Cup in Qatar. Those strange balloons were because they took place in a place called Oxygen Park, which was an education city, and the theme for that World Cup was access to education. And as I say, those sessions are very busy, lots of energy in the room, lots of dancing, lots of some presenting, but being able to draw in the corner and have it projected, so it evolves in front of the players. They kind of keep looking up, and it might be the first time that they've ever realised that someone looking at them and recognise them for who they are. Having said in Russia, I was very much an individual on the outside looking in. I then went back to my university and said, I want some students involved in this. So can we take some students and make them part of the arts team? So got a little bit of funding from the university, and we took 3 students with different interests, different backgrounds. And they would be part of the team that would create and generate their own artwork. So there suddenly wasn't just me drawing, there were illustrators, textile designers, graphic designers, filmmakers, collage artists, all coming in and offering their view, and absolutely on a sort of equal level to anything what I was doing. And then we would drive a series of different outputs. So we'd make a daily publication, we'd make some textile banning, we'd make posters, and then there are sort of quiet moments that you can capture in a sketchbook with a pen that is very different to the kind of bold lens of a camera. And I think, as communication students, you might want to think about that. How do you, I'm sure you talk about this all the time, how do you approach the people that you're speaking to, make them feel like they want to be part of your story? So this was one of our textile students, actually. She was drawing one of the games, and a Syrian refugee team sat next to her, watched her draw what she was drawing. So she started to draw him. He was 17 years old, nice little sketch. She gave him the sketch, and then she went back to the studio and made a big textile banner as her memory of that moment. And then again, at the end of those 10 days, we put up an exhibition. Teams come in, they look at the artwork that they produced in their own workshops. Sponsors, stakeholders are invited, dignitaries are brought in. We auction some of the artwork. So there's an element of fundraising, profile raising, and also just general esteem for the young people that are taking part of the tournament. Animations were there. Street Child United has some key ambassadors, some people that represent. So on the left, you've got Sadok, who's in the first Street Child World Cup. He was a street kid in Tanzania. First Street Child World Cup in South Africa. He scored the first ever goal in a Street Child World Cup. And when you ask him, he said in a presentation, he always stands up and says, "And I scored the second." And this is Aya from Team Palestine, and she's one of the stories that you follow in the I Am Somebody film. And then we were invited back to Doha for the FIFA World Cup, and then there was a tour that showed the legacy artwork pieces that could then go on display after the event. So a lot of the work I've shown up to that point are about displaying that work in the moment, and then afterwards there's an opportunity for a tour of that work. And again, I know Football Mass and Street Child United are thinking about wanting to put on a tour of the activities that take place in the Street Child World Cup in next spring, that would then go on tour when the FIFA World Cup's here. The British Council are very important to us in this. The British Council in Mexico are helping fix a few things for those displays to happen. Now we go back to the studios at college and make prints of that work, record and capture the moments. So for instance, in a FIFA World Cup, when you've got all the attention on the games, Argentina playing Brazil, and all the fan villages are following the big screens and following the intense football moments, Doha was hot, and because of the television rights, a lot of the games take place at midday. So this is in a fan village, and all the areas where the sun was, there was no one standing, and everyone's just following the shadow around as the sun moves, just to try and stay cool. Again, that's a moment that maybe you're kind of looking for those journalistic stories that might be just a bit more interesting. Okay, we're getting towards the end now. We're getting towards the final tournament and then on to Mexico. So last year there was a Cricket World Cup. A number of teams from India, from all over, came together in Chennai from Mumbai, a 26-hour train ride across the country with a big banner supporting, showcasing what was about to happen. We did some activities on the train with each team, got each team to tell the story of where they'd come from. The lighting's a little tricky there. It was in the middle of the night, obviously. Lots of tired and weary people. There was a comms team on the train as well. And then when you arrive in Chennai, everyone's kind of up with the energy. And then you're back into that moment when all the teams meet again for the first time. There's a lot of emotion in the room. Individuals are being asked to share experiences, powerful moments, and suddenly a young boy from north of India might say something that connects with a young girl from Bolivia or from Mexico, and these kids suddenly feel, I'm not alone. And that's the beginning of that sort of transformation for them. As I say, there's a lot of emotion, a lot of energy, a lot of it's a sort of privilege to be there, I think, to sort of see that. So again, I'm just in the background there drawing on all this is taking place in front. The arts team's growing, so more students are working with us, so creating murals, inviting the teams to participate in the production of those murals. So they created the cricket pitch, and then each team was invited to leave a message at the beginning of the week. So dancing, so drumming, so noise, arts workshops. So students would facilitate workshops for the young teams, creating messages, graphic messages, redesigning flags, that kind of thing. Getting ready for the late show. There's a young boy from Team Burundi. He wanted some white paint to get in costume for the evening. We didn't have any white paint, so what did he use? Toothpaste from his hotel. And again, I think these last few slides here are just trying to emphasize the different way in which I think drawing provides perhaps a sort of it invites a conversation with your subject in a way that I think a camera does differently. And it's not an either or, both are absolutely important and valid and relevant. But there is something about that moment when you can kind of you can sit down and spend time with someone that it feels a little gentler, a little bit more accessible. We would have a center of operations. So here's the students that were working in the arts team room. Lots of time for drawing, visits to the British Council House. They're all invited to paint henna on their hands. Lots of cricket, lots of practice for the late shows. Competitive sport for sure. Teams are really getting into it, and this is the comms photography. This is the stuff that goes out and documents the events. Teams get the opportunity to sing their national anthem. I mean, remember, these are kids that come into this tournament without any identity, and they get the opportunity to represent their country, sing their national anthem, and take and have that full recognition. And alongside, so you've got the sports, and then you've got the arts, and then I mentioned earlier on this thing called the Congress. This is the moment when the teams, through social workers and carefully controlled sessions, talk about the things that they want to change, the issues that are affecting them, sometimes the trauma in their lives that they'd faced. And language is a very different way of expressing yourself. Sometimes images are a way in which you can express that more clearly. And each member of a team is invited to exchange a band with someone that they didn't know before they went into the tournament. So here's someone from one country going up to someone from another country, shared experiences, completely different lives up to this point, and they just offer a trust exchange. And it's a very powerful, meaningful, but small moment. And again, it was, while I'm showing some photographs of that, I actually felt that being able to be there and again, just sit quiet in the corner of the room and just observe and draw that moment was a real sort of privilege to sort of see it and be there. And then we use these drawings, however loose those drawings are, they become part of the story then, because those hands belong to all of those kids. It's not just about the personality of one person who's handed that band over. It's about that moment of trust and exchange. And it really underpins that. For me, it really sort of underpins that idea of I am somebody. We'd find a local printer to print up the zines, and these little magazines would then get handed out and traded amongst themselves. So kids didn't, at the beginning of the tournament, would look out for the publications, and then at the end of the tournament, they were trading magazines with each other, so they became collectible. And then finally, one of my favorite sort of outputs is a series of textile banners. So through the Congress, all those difficult conversations have taken place, and then a series of themes emerge out of that. So what do you as a kind of globally representative group of street connected young adults, what do you want to change? My voice matters, a kind of right to be heard, a right to be listened to. So using access to healthcare that everyone should have access to. Access to education. Everyone should have access to basic education rights. So, but the reason I think the textile design banners are so powerful is that you're synthesizing down some really difficult conversations throughout a whole week to just 3 words. And those 3 words then communicate that message very powerfully. And you can take the banners out into the streets. You can use them as a form of a declaration of our rights. And I know Football Mass and Street Charge United, they use these banners. John is going to a sponsorship meeting, or if he's going to the United Nations even, then that he would use those banners as a way of saying, this is who we are and this is what we represent. The kids were part of that. They created the slogan, they created the words, and the artist then helped build the deck, and then the posters would tell you a little bit more about the Declaration of Individual Rights. Okay, and then bottom left, you'll see a street child poster there from a girl that took place in the Street Child Olympics in 2014 in Brazil. This is a newspaper that is a unique newspaper for and by street connected children. So they're the writers, the journalists, the photographers, the illustrators that are creating the content for this newspaper. And then getting on to Mexico, getting on to next May. So you've got football mass, you have Street Child World Cup, you have teams, we have a series of sponsors here that are going to make this a really significant event. Let Her Play is a sort of hashtag that they want to, that they're going to use about gender equality. Sure, you'll hear more about the green card, sort of positive affirmation about behavior and the methodologies that people must work with. It's going to be at West Tepic, and the pitches there. I just wanted to end on that slide that I showed from Lebanon at the beginning, when these guys are now 35 or something like that. What are their lives doing? So last night, I mean, I've been in Mexico for a few days, but last night I was really privileged, got the opportunity to visit one of Football Mass's projects, and it was a team photo of young girls that may well be part of the tournament. Young boys, this is their project, and again, so there's some sort of continuity here about what I'm doing. So there's some, I've shown you a lot of varied activities and work there, from World Cups, Olympic Games, war-torn conflicts. Some things just stay with you throughout. I love that moment of kid having a go. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you. I don't know how long I spoke for there, but I'm happy if you've got any questions, or if we've done our time, that's fine.
¿Quieres comentar algo, Sergio, para redondear algo? Bueno, primero que te conozcan, porque no hemos tenido oportunidad de presentarte. Bueno, Sergio Guerrero es uno de los líderes de la Fundación Fútbol Más, con la que estamos colaborando, y gracias a Sergio, ese equipo es que Tim vino a visitarnos para invitarnos a este proyecto. Les platico, este proyecto, ya saben, tiene que ver con comunicación para el cambio social, con el uso del deporte como motor de desarrollo social. Y el próximo año, como ya se dijo aquí, como ya dijo Tim, la mirada se va a volcar en el fútbol espectáculo, en el fútbol negocio, en el mundial, en la parte comercial. Pero previo a eso, un mes antes, se va a tener esta oportunidad en Huastepec. Y bueno, la idea es colaborar, invitar a quien quiera colaborar, participar con Tim, con estudiantes que van a venir de su universidad, y vamos a también invitar a estudiantes de diseño y de otras carreras por si quieren participar. Y bueno, si quieres tú,
Seguro.
adelante.
¿Qué les digo? Miren, tratando de juntar lo que dijo Tim y lo que tal vez platicaron con Grace en la presentación que les dio, es que lo que va a ocurrir en próximo mayo, creo que no exagero, que es una oportunidad que no se va a volver a dar en su generación o en la mía. La cantidad de personas que van a poner su mirada en México no va a tener comparación con nada de lo que haya ocurrido hasta ahora. Y eso es relevante porque si a cualquiera de ustedes les interesa usar lo que están aprendiendo hoy, sus habilidades para generar un impacto social, no se me puede ocurrir mejor momento que este. Les voy a decir algunos motivos por los cuales creo que eso va a ocurrir. Bueno, primero, escuchar un poco de Street Child World Cup, pero lo que busca este evento es básicamente crear una plataforma de visibilidad tan grande que sea inevitable para los gobiernos de los países ponerle atención a los jóvenes que van a estos eventos. Ya es una realidad, tanto en India, Pakistán, Perú y Bolivia. Los líderes jóvenes que han participado en estos eventos han regresado a sus países para reunirse con presidentes, primeros ministros, congresos, y a partir de eso han cambiado leyes que hoy benefician a millones de personas. Ejemplos de ello, tal vez no es tan común acá en México pensar en que no tenemos identificaciones o que las personas no existen en el sistema, porque acá tal vez una acta de nacimiento es fácil de conseguir, pero en países como India, como Pakistán, ese no es un derecho. Y si no tienes un acta de nacimiento, una identificación, no puedes tener acceso a ningún programa social. en estos países que les acabo de mencionar, estos jóvenes, imagínense, hombres y mujeres más jóvenes que ustedes, llegaron a plantarse enfrente de una primera ministra, un presidente, y a demandarles que cambiaran las reglas, las leyes, para proteger los derechos de la infancia. Y esto acá en México ya está empezando a generar tracción. Tan solo ayer la presidenta presentó este proyecto como una de las actividades alrededor del mundial que se van a realizar para generar impacto social. ACNUR, la Embajada de Reino Unido, el IMSS, son algunos de los socios que ya tenemos que nos están impulsando. Y ya con los liderazgos que tenemos dentro de la organización, pues hay oportunidad para que ustedes pongan en práctica lo que están hoy aprendiendo. Si saben contar historias, ya sean escritas, con su voz, con dibujos, este es un momento tal vez único que van a tener en sus vidas para usarlo para un cambio social. No sé exactamente cómo, porque esa es la verdad, no sé, Tim ya les mostró unos ejemplos, pero los invitaría a que sigan el ejemplo de Tim. Y si tiene una idea, así como él en su momento le escribió a un periódico y le dijo, oigan, ustedes no tienen un periodista, un ilustrador que haga arte de fútbol, pues igual y ustedes háganlo así. Si tienen una idea de cómo pueden usar sus habilidades para generar un cambio social, por favor acérquense a nosotros y trataremos seguramente de encontrar una forma de que eso ocurra. Esto.
Muchas gracias. Pues lo que vamos a hacer, bueno, preguntas, comentarios, muchachos. Vamos a sacar una convocatoria, los vamos a invitar. Vamos en principio a invitar a gente de la Ibero y de comunicación, pero si tienen un conocido amigo, amiga que quiera colaborar, bienvenido. El proyecto que estamos haciendo con Fútbol Más, la Fundación Fútbol Más, es muy importante para nosotros y como esto es hasta mayo, pues nos vamos a llevar varios meses preparando todo. Hay que organizar muchas cosas, la logística, en fin, una serie de temas, ¿no? Adelante, Sandra.
I want to know, just tournament like this develop with Fútbol Más, create emotional memories that stay with children for years, like we see in the pictures you gave us. How does the design process account for this long-term emotional impact? And what is going to be for the next few months in with the other Mundial?
Yeah. A good question. And you know, when you were speaking there, I was thinking about last night when I went to the project. There was a young boy that was there who was in India the year before. He was part of the team that was singing the anthem, and he was back at the project a year later. And I had one of the little zines that we produced, and it had a picture of Team Mexico in it. And I showed him. I said, "Are you in this picture?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm in the top corner." And so I took a photo of him holding this, you know, a year and a bit later. And we said to him, "Are you in touch with anybody that you met at the Street Child tournament?" You know, he was from a project, a Football Mass project, probably never been out of Mexico City, never traveled beyond this project, and he took part in a Street Child World Cup in India. He said, "Yeah, I speak to friends from Nepal, from Zimbabwe, from Hungary, from Bolivia." So he's got a whole network of support of people around him who are sharing those stories. And I think that the legacy bit there, which I think is what you're asking for, how, you know, what happens after the tournament is in that support network, and what do they do after. So there's a young leaders program. So there's a young woman from Bolivia who's now a coach, Dana.
Yeah.
So Dana was a player in 2014, I think, maybe 2018 in Russia. Then she came back as a young leader in 2022, and in 2026 she's going to be coming back as a coach. So there's a way through in terms of education, and she's always spoken about you know, the power of the arts to kind of communicate that journey as well. So she's an interesting example of what we call legacy.
Another question, but this is for like a panorama, because my little sister, she's in Imperial College.
Oh yeah,
and
in London.
Yeah, in London, and she loves football. That's what reminds me with this program.
Yeah.
I want to know if you wouldn't say the collaboration between football mass and brings a uniquely British perspective to communication, sport, design, like
So, so I think you're talking about there about the partnership between Football Mass and the identity of Street Child United previously.
Yeah, because in London there's a huge design
Sure,
school.
sure.
And I want to know the perspective, not in London, but in Bath.
So I think well, Football Mass is it feels like a really good partnership. I mean, the Football Mass build in art activities and the methodology around the green card, which I'm sure Checker could tell you more about, but it's not just about the sport, it's about the development and providing opportunities for all these kids. It's not about turning one of these young people into a professional sports person. Great if that happens, but it's about providing an opportunity for all of them, whatever that might be, whether it's an education program, whether it's a coaching program, whether it's through the arts. And I think, it feels to me like a very comfortable fit. From the outside looking in, it feels to me like Street Child United and Football Mass have got very similar respect for how design and art can both help the young people develop their confidence and their self-esteem, but also provide clear communication to their sponsors and stakeholders, and really keep on raising the bar that will generate interest in the tournament. It feels to me like it will be bigger and better than previous tournaments.
If I may add something. Respecto a tu primera pregunta, si le entendí bien, ¿cómo es que cambia o en qué contribuye este evento en la vida de las personas?
Sí, en la vida de la persona, porque toda en la infancia, como ustedes son ustedes.
Totalmente. Y para eso creo que hay primero que hacer un ejercicio de perspectiva de cuál es la realidad de las niñas y niños que participan en este evento, ¿no? Estos jóvenes son personas que viven en condiciones de mucha vulnerabilidad con muy pocas oportunidades. Y lo que ocurre al participar en uno de estos eventos es que pasan de una situación en la que sus comunidades pueden estar estigmatizados, la sociedad les brinda pocas oportunidades, existen estereotipos, y pasan a una situación en la Copa en la que pueden reunirse con embajadores, con presidentes, que son entrevistados por medios de comunicación internacional y se preocupan por las necesidades y condiciones en las que viven ellas y ellos, ¿no? Eso, no sé qué les parezca a ustedes, si es como qué tan trascendente puede ser, pero la realidad es que estos jóvenes cambian la forma de ver el mundo. Tal vez ocurre que si todos los días tú ves que tu realidad está restringida a este ángulo y pasas a un momento donde tu perspectiva es esta, entonces tú mismo empiezas a pensar en que lo que es posible en tu vida es mucho mayor de lo que tú ves todos los días. Entonces, el evento, si te digo, lo tengo que reducir en algo, es en la perspectiva que tienen, en dos cosas. La perspectiva, cómo cambia en cada una de las y los participantes, y dos, en las oportunidades que obtienen de realmente incidir en su realidad. Eso.
Ha hecho un buen impacto, siento. O sea, más que todo por lo que van a hacer dentro de meses.
Sí, Tim hablaba del ejemplo de Claudio, e incluso me voy un paso atrás. Hay un caso que a mí me encanta de una chica de Jojutla, que después del terremoto su familia perdió todo. Se cayó su casa, murió su madre, y sin muchos recursos para salir adelante, ella pues logra mantenerse en la escuela, pero participa en la Street Child World Cup. Regresa y el pueblo de Jojutla le hace una celebración, la entrevistan en medios de comunicación local, y a partir de ahí la presidencia municipal la invita a que ella haga una especie de plebiscito en la que reúnen opiniones de la comunidad y proponen soluciones de política dentro de su comunidad. Entonces, una chica que pasó de no tener casi ninguna oportunidad de desarrollo en su vida, pasa ahora a ser una lideresa política y económica en su comunidad, teniendo 16 años.
¿Alguna otra pregunta o comentario? Emma, adelante, te escuchamos.
Is there like a process for the children to engage with each other or like become friendly previous to the match? Is there like a dynamic for them to well to meet and to get to know each other?
Before they arrive at the tournament.
Or maybe even the tournament.
Well, absolutely the tournament. I mean, I don't know whether I don't think they meet before the tournament. So when that spirit of the games, so when I was drawing on the iPad and the drawings was being projected and everyone was in the room, that's the first time really that they're all meeting. They're all arriving at the airport from different parts of the world, and you put them all in this room, and it's like an explosion. You know, it's like the energy is huge. Everyone's talking, everyone's performing, and there is an element of keeping it for that moment. But I think what's interesting about your question is, I'm sort of dipping into the street child tournaments for the tournament itself. So I'll come and observe and draw with an arts team and make activities for the tournament itself. But what I'm trying to do between Qatar and 2026 in Mexico is I'm trying to explore what is that story between tournaments. What do these kids, what are the lives of these young people? How are they preparing for the tournament? How are they selected? How do they train? What skills do they have to be able to go into the tournament and be able to cope with not just the sports, but the friendships? And are they willing to participate? Are you going to be shy and sit at the back and not really participate? So the careful selection process for the teams isn't just who's the best footballer at football match. It's about all those things about friendship, being able to communicate with people, being curious and wanting to find out. So there are lots of activities that each organization in the world does, but I don't think they come together until the actual tournament itself. And then afterwards, through the Young Leaders program, the teams become much more interactive. So once they're together, they're together.
Algo que te puedo agregar ahí es que tal vez no queda tan claro, pero en verdad el objetivo final del evento no es la parte de fútbol. El objetivo y el grueso del programa es un congreso que se hace al final, estilo modelo de la ONU, donde cada equipo habla acerca de sus necesidades y de sus propuestas para cambiar su país. Y más bien usamos el deporte, entonces el torneo, más actividades de arte, para que eso sirva como el lenguaje en común. Ahí pasa que tienes el equipo de Nepal, el de Madagascar, el de Bolivia, no habla nadie el mismo idioma. Lo único que de repente puede ayudarles a compartir es primero, te voy a dar 3 ejemplos. Con arte ocurre que les dan un lienzo y les piden que dibujen los desafíos de su comunidad. Entonces de repente tú ves un dibujo de Congo que se ve muy parecido al tuyo de Perú. Entonces eso de entrada empieza a despertar ciertas conversaciones entre jóvenes que no hablan el mismo idioma, o si lo hablan es a través de, con el traductor de Google, con lo limitado que es, pero ya tienen esta conexión de arte que permite a través de emociones, porque el arte te da mucho más que solo lo que ves, ¿no? Empezar a conectar. Y luego el fútbol también es un lenguaje universal. Igual si quieres, bueno, ponle el adjetivo que quieras, pero la realidad es que casi cualquier persona en el mundo sabe qué es cómo se juega fútbol. Entonces es a través de las emociones que da el torneo de fútbol que también empieza a generar vínculos. Y entonces ya teniendo estos vínculos que les dio el arte, les dio el juego, luego pueden llegar a la parte del congreso, donde el objetivo final es que hagan tal cual una acta, que es la que van a presentar a sus gobernantes, pero ya tienen todo este vínculo Ahí es como contaba Claudio, que ya tiene su amigo de Nepal y de no sé cuántos lugares, que aunque no hablaron nunca en español o en inglés, una sola palabra, conectaron y luego pudieron compartir esa experiencia ya en el Congreso final.
Muy bien, pues este es un ejemplo de comunicación para el cambio social. Adelante, Amaya. Pero puedes más cerca para que te veas acá en la... Por favor.
When you go, you've been to different countries and now you're here in Mexico for the Street Child World Cup. And I'm really interested in knowing if specifically like right now for this World Cup, whether we're here in Mexico, it's a very diverse place for art and pigments and colors and different art techniques. And you've been to a lot of places around the world. So my question is specifically here, are you going to implement like techniques that are from here from Mexico to try to also share not only illustration and your work, but also kind of Mexican culture and the things that are from here?
100%. I mean, I really hope so. And you know, it might be that we're looking for you guys to help us with that. And whether that's through being on the outside and looking in, or actually working with local students, local artists, designers, absolutely. I mean, Mexico, as you say, rich culture, color, design. Football Mass has a design team that produces design content. We want to utilize and work with all of that. And we've got a few every street child tournament is different, and it should be. You can't be just doing the same thing once every 4 years. And I think, you know, it feels to me like the arts and that sense of culture that you're describing will play a really key role in this event. You know, we want countries to really engage in their own culture, but to absorb the culture of the host nation. And yeah, that's what, you know, being able to make visits, you know, we can get a sense of that. I'm hoping while I'm here to try and visit universities, talk to students, go find, you know, arts and craft supplies, textile printing facilities, factories. So really absorb ourselves in the culture of being here. That's how we can make the most of it.
Was really good. And maybe take them to museums that here there's tons and tons of museums if there's a chance.
Well, there will be a visit of some kind. I'm not
Yeah,
going to a museum.
we will. The schedule is pretty tight, but we try to do much.
¿Cuántos días son exactamente? ¿10 días?
Son 10 días, pero todos los días están llenos de actividades. Sí tenemos pensado venir por lo menos 2 veces.
A la Ciudad de México.
Sí, parte de la idea mágica es que la final del torneo de fútbol se haga en CU y luego el congreso lo podamos hacer en la UNAM en alguno de sus auditorios.
And the late shows, which are the events where each team gets to say something about where they're from. And because there is more than one team from Mexico, then you have some diversity in that as well. And teams prepare and plan for that. They're great.
Bien, muchachos, ¿alguien más tiene alguna pregunta o comentario? Sí, adelante, Luisa.
They can get like very emotional, like completely lose control of their emotions. And I was wondering, how do you manage that with kids? Like if they get too passionate about the game, like if they get a bit aggressive, or after the game, like you're in Mexico, we scream like a bad word every time they go for somebody. Like that. So I was wondering, like, what do you?
There's a set of rules that are in place, and the summit spent some time where the team leaders were there for the first time discussing the rules around the game and the expectations on behavior and how to play. There is this emphasis on support. However, it's a football tournament. There are teams that want to win, and so you don't want to take all the emotion out of it. And I do think, you know, I'm here championing the arts, but I am interested in how the arts can kind of contribute to what you're saying there. So, you know, I'm a bit sort of quick and fast, and I talk very quickly sometimes, and art drawing is a way of just keeping me calm. So we want to use some activities around arts workshops where we might be saying to the teams? Can you express, can you show in a set of images, how do you feel before you go out to play? What's your emotion when you're all hyped up and you're really excited about to play? Can you put that down in a visually in some way? And then at the end of the game, how do you feel? Can you express yourself now in a different way? So we might use the arts to handle some of those emotions as well. And the other thing to bear in mind is I talked about that energy of when all these teams come together for the first time, 28 teams, I think, from around the world, all in the room. Wow, this is a World Cup. I'm here to represent my country. I'm going to sing the national anthem. I'm going to be playing on a stage, on a big football stage. Towards the end of the week, there's the realization then that you've got to go home. And you're back into your world, and there's a huge responsibility then on the organizations that are hosting the tournament to think about managing that transition back, and legacy activities, follow-up programs like leadership programs, exhibitions, opportunities to meet dignitaries where you showcase what you did when you were in the tournament is a way of keeping that life of the tournament going. So on the one hand, there's a bit of control of the emotions, but you don't want to control too much. It's got to be what it is. That's part of the strength of the tournament. It's an extremely powerful thing to witness and see the lives of these young people change and grow in that week. There's a few moments, but they have to be reined in, and there are the usual rules of football: red cards and yellow cards as well as green cards.
Daniela, adelante.
Is there a way for the children to get the drawings that you need, like a copy or something, or is the only time that they have access to them is on the expo or the exhibitions that you do?
So, in fact, we were talking about this morning. One of the goals, one of the aims of anything that's produced in the tournament in terms of an art output, we want to think about it as being a sustainable item. What that means is we want it to be dispersed and used and have a life beyond the tournament. So whether it's the zines that are handed out and people take it back and keep it as a souvenir, whether it's a poster of the declarations that goes up in an office in the host organization's headquarters, whether it's a ball that's been signed and drawn on by players, they take the ball home. So the idea is that they do get access to that content. And then, of course, communications are shared through social media and website, all those channels. But you're right, the opportunity to have something. And one of the things that we're trying to do this time is have a potential, we don't know if we can do it yet, but we want to make a publication, a book, something that would kind of capture the whole event and then get a book in the hands of every player. So I think it's an important thing.
Daniela y luego Natalia.
My question goes to the creative process. Does it have a big difference between the first sketches you make and the final product Does it have a big difference in the process?
There's not enough time. Earlier on, some of those drawings of Beckham, they're big paintings. They take a long time to make, and they're based on drawings, photographs. You go back to the studio, you develop the painting. In a street child tournament, everything's moving and happening so quickly, and you're almost creating and making artwork in real time. They're all sketches. They're all very loose kind of sketches. So you have to find a way of making that process as spontaneous as possible. And what I would say there is, I guess I'm talking mainly to the design side of your the kind of creative side of you as communication students, is practice. So I spend a lot of time just drawing. While I'm here, I'm drawing in a sketchbook on the streets, just trying to kind of capture the things that I see. Going to museums, drawing things in museums, and the more you practice, the easier it is in those intense moments when you've got to draw something very quickly. So there is some preparation.
Gracias. ¿Sí, Natalia?
How does artificial intelligence impact on your work? Because nowadays, you can make any drawing from any picture with whatever style you want. So how does it impact on your work?
Right. Well, I think we should go and have a coffee. Come back, and we've got about 10. Is that? That's a big question, and it's a conversation that we're absolutely is at the heart of all our practices. I'd be interested. Show of hands. How many of you see AI as an opportunity, and how many of you see it as a threat? So hands up if you see it as an opportunity.
Like as a tool, not an opportunity, like as a tool to help.
Yeah.
How many of you see it as a threat?
Friend.
Threat.
Friend. I said friend, yeah.
I mean, it's a really, you know, it's a really challenging time. Well, I went to a talk recently where someone said, we're calling it AI because we don't know what else to call it, but in a few years' time, it will just be called software because, as you say, it's another tool. It's another tool to work with. I mean, I've got lots of issues around, you know, the search engines that are, you know, trawling the internet to kind of scoop up everyone's style and everyone's approach, and we have no control over that. But it's a very helpful tool. It speeds things up. It allows for clear communication. There's lots of positive things around it, and I think you have to find a way of retaining your own individual voice. What is it that you want trying to say? What's your story? What is it you're trying to communicate? And if you've got a key understanding of what that is, then use as much AI as you can to help you get there, but retain the authenticity in what it is you're trying to say or create or make. That would be a simple solution to what is a question that you're going to spend most of the rest of your time at university discussing.
But the mind tells me that, like, he's going to replace all the artists, but I tell him no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a moment, isn't it? It's a moment when, you know, I'm old enough to remember when, you know, the internet changed the way in which publishing and graphic design was operated. There was a lot of jobs that were lost, but there were a lot of new jobs that were created. And I think the same thing will happen here. Things will settle. But it's an interesting time.
La última, the last, sí. Bueno, Lenka y luego el profesor Cholvis.
I do.
Sí.
Do you have any like short-term or long-term goals that you want to achieve through your art? Because you were talking about the book, but like, I don't know, maybe other goals.
So the main goal for me is I mean I've been really lucky and privileged to be able to be at sort of big global sporting events. So being able to be in the stadium when Usain Bolt is running 100 meters, or England are in a semi-final. They don't get to finals, so semi-final of a World Cup. And it's been fantastic to be part of that. But I've got to say, in the few years in which I've been working with organizations like these guys, then the real meaningful moments has been able to try and contribute to the story of the development of these young people. And I know that sounds a bit sort of kitsch, but genuinely I do think that it's as meaningful to play a role in their development as it is to be in the stadium watching a World Cup final. And so I suppose the goal there for me is to try and focus the work on telling their stories. Their stories are much more than the tournament itself. The 10 days of the tournament is the moment when the world might be watching, but then there's all those times in between. So in the last 4 years since the last World Cup, I've been able to visit Mexico, Project Mexico. I'm going to go to Egypt, Project in Egypt. I've been to Congo to see a project there, and I've seen projects in the UK. And I'm starting to get a picture of what happens in between those years. What the future holds for those young people, and if I can contribute to that, then great.
¿Alguien más? Bueno, el profesor Cholvis.
Very brief. I just want to say thank you for your interesting and very excellent presentation. And I don't know if you are agree with me, but I think that this kind of project is linked with a crucial issue, that it is the human rights, and promotion of the human rights.
Absolutely, it's at the heart of it.
And I'm very interested to know if there before the application of this kind of projects, do you realize some kind of research or study about the social conditions?
No, I mean, I think that's something that emerges and evolves. So again, the theme of this talk is I talked about the things in your life and what you want to say in your work. If you have if you have a passion for community, making work for social good, the right way that helps and improves people's lives, and that will stay with you forever. But the nature in which that happens will be varied and will change, and opportunities. Some of the things I could say maybe I planned, but many of the things You don't plan, they just sort of happen. And, you know, one of the nice things about these zines, that, I mean, a zine is as a word, it's just short for magazine, and it's a kind of slightly punk graphic. It's about low cost, low production. But the one thing I really like about these is it's the same size as a passport. And a passport, you know, when you hand one of these to the kids, it's, you know, a passport historically was a document that represented freedom. It was your opportunity to present freedom. Actually, increasingly in the world, it's becoming a document which is about control. And that's another bigger conversation. But I like the idea that, you know, this collection of activities that are just simple drawn lines has the same sort of feel when you give it to someone as a document of freedom. Human rights are the key of that.
Perfecto, pues muchas gracias, un aplauso.
Good questions.
Yes, muy buenas. Vamos a convocarlos ahí abiertamente si alguien quiere sumarse. Pueden, así como hacemos en el caso del profesor Luis en Málaga, si alguien quiere hacer una estancia en Málaga, nuestro contacto es él. Si alguien se anima después a ir a la Universidad de Bath, también podemos a través de Team establecer un contacto. Así que muchas gracias, Sergio. Luis, ya, ¿no? ¿Algo que comentar, Miri, al grupo? ¿Indicación?
No, solo, bueno, solo decirles que tanto para el equipo de Un Granito de Arena como UNFAI ya casi están sus calificaciones, ¿no?